And welcome back to Primility Primer, your twice weekly reminder to practice keeping your pride and humility in balance so that you can better manage your emotions and make your next decision a better one. You know, one of the big benefits that I got out of taking the 2 month hiatus from doing the daily episodes is a lot of clarity on what Primility is, what it isn't, what it means, what it doesn't, what its benefits are, what it really is intended to do. And I think one of the benefits of only doing 2 episodes a week now is that I can really spend more time fleshing out each topic and hopefully making each individual episode meaningful. I'm really glad that I did the 80 episodes each day and kind of the impromptu nature of it. But really, with these new episodes, I really want to develop these ideas more, spend more time before I come on here to give you a more cogent, well thought out episode each time. And so I've tried to do that today. And actually, I wrote most of this episode out. And so if my delivery sounds a little bit different, it's because I'm going to read most of this because I think it's very important. I think this is going to become a foundational episode for explaining what Primility is to new people and to anyone who just needs a refresher. And so I want to make sure that I get it right. And so I did write this out. If you go to primility.com/show/083, what you read there will probably be very similar to what you read here. And I hope that what it may lack in a natural delivery, it will make up for by really zeroing in on exactly what we're trying to get at when we talk about Primility and how you make better decisions through Primility. So let's jump right into it. And I want to start out with this sentence right here. Primility is a mental framework that helps you better manage your emotions so you can make your next decision a better one. You may have noticed that the intro to these Primility primers is different, that the homepage of Primility is different. And that's the big difference, which is this focus on making our next decision a better one. Because as I follow Primility through, and obviously it's about balancing pride and humility, but when you follow that through and you think about, okay, what does that actually mean? Why should I care about this? Why should I focus on this? What will I get out of it? It's because it will help you make your next decision a better one, which I think is something pretty universal. I think all of us, to a certain extent, would like to make better decisions. And so I want to talk about here how Primility helps you do that, because that sentence is the essence of Primility. Right? Primility is a mental framework that helps you better manage your emotions so you can make your next decision a better one. And I want you to notice a few things about that sentence. The inclusion of the word better twice, the use of the word manage instead of control, the emphasis on one decision, your next decision. So in this episode, I'm going to break that sentence down into its component parts, and we're going to explain and talk about each one of them because I want to make sure that we're all on the same page regarding what we're trying to accomplish with Primility. And as I said, I gained a lot of clarity about what Primility can, does, and should mean during my hiatus in November and December. And I want to be sure that I pass that clarity on to you here in the early part of 2016 before we go any further with our exploration of Primility. So let's start from the beginning. Primility is a mental framework that helps you. So let's start here. This is important, what Primility is and what it isn't. Primility is not a buzzword, all right? It's not an idea or a concept. It's well beyond that now. Buzzwords create buzz, but Primility is intended to create change. Ideas and concepts are things we discuss. Primility should be a thing we use, that we practice. And that's why viewing Primility as a mental framework is so important. It's a binary mental framework that we can visualize on a spectrum, right? Pride on one end, humility on the other, which allows us to orient every emotion we experience, every decision we make, and every action we take in a useful way. Because without a proper mental framework that is simple to use and that applies to all situations, how can we effectively assess our emotional responses, the decisions they drive, and the actions that follow? Perhaps there are other effective ways to do this. In fact, I'm sure there are, but this is the one that works for me and the one that works for so many Primility audience members who have been so generous in sharing their experiences with me. And you can consider Primility to be like a muscle because it strengthens the more we use it. Think of Primility as you would any other decision-making framework. The more you use it, the more natural it becomes, and the more skilled you get at using it effectively to make better decisions. Let me give you this very basic example, okay? So, our trash day here at home is Tuesday. And every Tuesday morning, we're supposed to have our trash out and ready to be picked up by 7 o'clock a.m. Now, in the division of household labor that has developed between me and Heather, I am the one responsible for trash, and I've never missed a day. Knock on wood. Well, a couple of weeks ago, at about, I don't know, 7:30 a.m., something like that, on a Tuesday morning, I was deep in the middle of something, probably writing, uh, and the trash, frankly, had slipped my mind. And so Heather came in and she asked me if I was going to take the trash out. She didn't do it in a nagging way, and we all know the difference. She just asked. Well, my immediate reaction to this was an emotional response driven by defensiveness. I wouldn't say that I snapped at her, but I kind of gave her one of those terse, yes, I've got it responses that suggested that I didn't appreciate her unneeded, in my own mind anyway, reminder. Because I probably would have remembered to take the trash out. I always do. And it usually doesn't come until late in the morning anyway. So I had time. So, because of all this, the prideful part of me reacted negatively to my supreme waste management authority being questioned. Now, I'm not sure if Heather took my response negatively and didn't say anything about it, but that's how it felt to me. So, put it this way, I wasn't happy with my own reaction. Because why was I being defensive? Her question was valid. And frankly, I had forgotten in that moment. So what if the trash pickup had come on time that day? I'd be screwed, and we would have had to live with a bunch of garbage for an extra week, which is disgusting. So I realized that I was experiencing an emotional reaction driven by pride that was manifesting itself in defensiveness, as excessive pride often does. And this led to an immediate poor decision and action to not respond in the nicest or the most productive way. So in that next moment, then, right, I had this emotional reaction. And now in that next moment, I had an opportunity. I had this opportunity to manage this emotional reaction that I was having, which again, I recognized as being driven by pride. So now it was time to balance it with some humility. And so I did the following. Number one, I considered how grateful I should be that Heather was actually on top of the trash that morning, saving myself from the indignity of completely forgetting. And I'm not sure if I apologized to her for my reaction because, again, I don't think she took it as negatively as I felt it was in my own head. But I definitely wanted to have that intentional gratitude of feeling grateful for her asking because it was important that she did. I also considered how easy it was for me, just as the simple, fallible human that I am with a lot going on, to forget this weekly chore without a built-in reminder. So I immediately added text and email alerts to my weekly to-do list item, which would remind me. So that way, if I did forget, which, hey, I might forget again in the future, that would kind of be my fail-safe. All right. And then I considered how useless it would be to harbor any defensiveness or ill will for something so small and meaningless, especially when the defensiveness was really more of a manifestation of my own embarrassment for forgetting than anything else. And just recognizing this made the negative emotion drift away because the light of truth so often does that for our darkest, ugliest thoughts and emotions. And all of this occurred in about 3 to 5 seconds in my own head immediately after my response to Heather. Now, the question is why? And the answer is because I've spent the last 10 years practicing primility, and I've gotten better at it over time, and it's become more natural, and it's become my personal key for better managing my emotions to make my next decision a better one. Okay, now on to the next element of that sentence. Better manage your emotions so you can. And again, remember, the sentence that we're breaking down here is Primility is a mental framework that helps you better manage your emotions so you can make your next decision a better one. So we just broke down the Primility, the mental framework part. Now it's this idea of better managing your emotions so you can. So here we go. We all have emotional reactions all the time, and we're foolish if we think that we can control our emotions. The very definition of emotion is a natural, instinctive state of mind deriving from one's circumstances, mood, or relationships with others. A natural, instinctive state. In any given moment, we can't control what is natural or what is instinctive, right? What we can do, though, over time, is alter what our natural and instinctive reactions are. Primility helps us do this. This is why it isn't control your emotions, but rather better manage your emotions. Emotions are going to happen. The emotions that you experience, that I experience today, are a result of your circumstances, mood, and relationships with others, or my circumstances, mood, and relationship with others. You can't control these emotions in the moment, but you can practice, there's that word again, managing your emotions in each moment by recognizing when your emotional response will lead to or has led to a poor decision or action that you may need to atone for or don't want to repeat. This is where Primility as a mental framework comes in. We just talked about that. Feelings of pride and humility are often driven by emotion. And in the story that I just told you, my feelings of excessive pride manifested themselves in defensiveness. Once I realized this, I knew that balancing that emotional reaction with intentional humility would be useful. And so I did, right? I didn't control my emotion, I better managed it. I shudder to think what my response would have been as an immature 25-year-old. It probably would have led to some silly argument. This wall, the shield of defensiveness up wouldn't have come down. And I know this because it did in past relationships, but I've gotten better with practice. So the flip side can also be true. Now, let me give you another example here. So I often feel anxiety before public speaking gigs. And what that is really is extreme humility manifesting itself in a meekness, a lack of confidence that makes me want to not take the stage, that fear that I get right before I take the stage. So what I try and do is manage that emotional reaction with intentional pride. I tell myself, I have useful, worthwhile experience to share that will help at least one person in this audience take an important step, right? I tell myself I've spoken many times before and it's almost always gone well. I tell myself that the hardest part is before I get on stage. And once I'm up there, I get into a zone and I really enjoy myself. So if I let my emotions control me, especially that excessive humility, I would never speak. But by better managing them, I make the next decision a better one to walk up on the stage. Which brings us to the final element of that sentence, the sentence that kicked this episode off, right? And that sentence is, Primility is a mental framework that helps you better manage your emotions so you can make your next decision a better one. Let's break down that final part. Make your next decision a better one. This is the goal. This is the big idea. This is the benefit of Primility, right? Making better decisions, but specifically making that next decision better. Not every single decision. We're not worried about all of them. We're just worried about one of them, the next one, because it's the only one that we can control. And the decision that we make right now in this moment has the power to alter our circumstances, our mood, and our relationships with others. All of which, as we mentioned before, will influence the context of our next decision because they can alter our emotional reaction to whatever comes next. So don't worry about the decision you have to make 2 weeks from now, or a day from now, or even an hour from now. That moment to make that decision will come. But there is only one useful way to prepare yourself to make the best decision then that is possible. And that's to make the best decision now, right here in this moment. And you do that by better managing your emotions so that your emotional reaction isn't driving your decisions and your actions. And you better manage your emotions by using Primility as a mental framework to understand why you're reacting the way you are and what needs to happen next to bring you into a useful state of balance. So here's my final thought for this episode. I've talked a lot about gratitude and empathy because they are tools that we can use to put ourselves more consistently into this Primility mindset, where using this mental framework to balance our pride and humility becomes a natural part of how we think and how we act. But it all starts with a simple desire to make a better next decision, which will drive a better next action. Once you do that, The next step then is to recognize how much your emotions can influence your decisions and actions, but not to feel powerless at that realization. Because while we can't control our emotions in any given moment, can't control them, there's that word, we can manage them in the moment and set ourselves up to have more productive emotional reactions in the future by making decisions that alter our circumstances, our mood, and our relationships with others in a productive way. And we do all of that by practicing the simple binary mental framework of Primility, which helps us keep our pride and humility in balance, allows us to better manage our emotions, and leads to our next decision being a better one. And that's the goal. So I hope that this episode has helped to bring some clarity to what Primility is, how you use it, and what the ultimate goal is to make that next decision a better one. And I hope that by really breaking this down and tracing it from beginning to end, you have a better understanding of how to actually do this. And I hope that the examples that I've shared help show you, even in these little moments in life that happen, how useful practicing Primility can be. And so what I would love now is I would love to hear some examples from you, right? Either an example of a time when you've used Primility in a way that I've, kind of like I've explained in this episode when I shared my examples, or a situation where now you look back on it, you say, man, in that situation, yeah, I was being defensive because of pride too, or I was being overly humble. And I wish that I had thought about this now, because that decision I made wasn't good and I could have made that decision better. I would love to hear these stories because they're so important and they help me understand Primility better. Being able to share them helps me to illustrate it better to everybody. And so I would love for you to share them with me. You can do that one of two ways. You can email me, jared@primility.com. And certainly if you don't want me to use the story in any episode, just let me know and we'll just have a private email conversation about it. But I'd also love to get discussions going. And we're doing that over on Facebook. If you go to primility.com/Facebook, you'll see the Primility group. Just request access. I'll know that you heard about it on this episode. And then I will grant you access to that. And you can join the discussion because there's some really useful discussions going on in there. And I think our understanding of Primility and our ability to practice it effectively gets so much better when we share our experiences with others and see how others are using it to make their next decision a better one. Thank you very much for joining me on this episode of Primility Primer. I will be back on Thursday with another episode, and we will do our second gratitude gathering over at Blab. Again, you can watch this at primility.com/live. Had a lot of fun with the first one. More people showed up than I thought, so I really appreciate that, and I look forward to doing it again. And with that said, have a wonderful day. Keep practicing pride and humility. Keep your pride and humility in balance. Make that next decision a better one. And we will talk on Thursday, everybody. Wrist bump.